Okay, next in my series of Christmas cards, I thought I'd do kind of a little watercolor card, and I'm going to create a scene using this stamp set from Gina. And then I think I'm going to use this Season's Greetings sentiment from Hero Arts. First thing I'm going to do is prepare my watercolor paper. I got this at Craft Warehouse. It is 100% cotton and I love it. My scene is not going to take up the whole card. So let me cut down my watercolor panel to something slightly bigger than what I'm going to need. So I want it to be like 3.5 tall. Right. And then I'm super frugal, so I save all of my scraps. I can always find use for them later. Now that I've got my panel kind of laid out, I haven't in my mind kind of what I want it to look like. And I want the deer to be standing on kind of a snowy hillside. So I am just going to tear my tape, kind of a snowy hillside kind of look. And I think I want it there. Then I'm gonna I want straight edges all around this side as well. And I want them to be about 1/4 inch. So I'm just gonna eyeball it and give myself a nice frame. Painting tape. Actually, I said 1/4 inch, but I think I want 1/8 inch border. Sorry. Just really light border all the way around. And this one, I think. Actually, all of these might be too far in. And what's really crazy is I'm being such a perfectionist, but I'm actually going to cut this down anyway. So when I have everything taped down, I am going to give this a light wash. I want this to be kind of a wet on wet technique. So I'm going to wet down my paper. And then I'm going to go in with my watercolors. And these are really great watercolors. They're from Rebel Unicorn. And this was kind of one of their sets. I guess it's the Crave set. And I really love these colors. I think that they work really well together. They do a great job. And they just kind of dissolve so seamlessly. It's beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna go in with my palette. I know I want a really dark blue. I want this to be kind of a wintry blue. So I'm gonna go in. This is called Blueberry Muffin. And then I want a little bit of light there, but also I'm gonna darken it with a little bit of black. And we're going to test it out on this scrap piece that I cut off. I think I want it a little bit brighter than that, so I'm going to go back with a little bit more blueberry. See if I can brighten it up a little bit. Yeah, I like how that looks. On my wet and sheet, I'm going to hold this at a little bit of an angle. Let me move this here so you can see. So that I'm gonna let gravity do most of the work for me. And I'm just gonna do a pretty gradient across the top. And then pull it down. And this is gonna give me a very smooth gradient when it dries. I think I want it a little bit more. Stark than that. Great. I want a nice contrast between the white that's underneath the paper or the tape and the color up here. All right. And then you can let it dry. So wait for it to dry, or you can use a heat gun to kind of help it along. Use a heat gun to help it along. Now it's not 100% dry, but it is dry enough for what I want to do next. So next, I'm going to take a fan brush and some of these Gansai Tambi watercolors. I love these. And I'm gonna use this white gold. Give it a good spritz. I'm gonna use this white gold. Let it sit there to activate for a second. And splatter on some snow. And then I'm also going to take some white acrylic paint. This one I just got, I think, at Walmart. So it's just the cheap paint. Put this, just a dollop. And then I'm gonna water it down so that it's nice and runny as well. So it's got a nice thin consistency. I'm gonna tap this onto my background too. And then this, I'm actually gonna let dry because I don't want to accidentally spread out my splatters with the power from the air from the heat gun. While the paint is drying, I am gonna work on the background panel for the card. And so I am going to use this embossing folder. I don't know where I got it, but there's a bunch of these out there, snowflake kind of looking embossing folders. Then I'm going to use my distress inks. I'm going to use Stormy Sky to go around the edges of where the panel is going to be, because obviously the image is going to be in the middle, so I don't need to do the whole panel, just the outside bits. Just kind of spot where the edges of this paper is so I can go in from there. So around here. Just going to do a nice layer, and the embossed image is going to be white. All right, let me lay this down. Put my sandwich together and run it through my embossing folder, or running through my die cutting machine. And it might have been harder to see when I was just putting the ink down, but you can see here's what it looks like with all of the embossing done. Now that it's dry, now comes the fun part, which is to remove all of the tape. To see the design. And while I said like this is going to be a smooth gradient, it kind of backfilled when I was drawing it and created this sort of hard line there, but I don't hate it actually. I think it adds interest to the panel. Next step is to put it in my MISTI. And to bring out my Gina K stamps. And decide how I want it to look. All right. I want the trees there. I want the stag, the doe. I think I want the doe right here. The bird right there. Actually, and let me bring out my sentiments as well. All right. Now that I've got the layout where I wanted, what's really nice is these are silhouette stamps, so I can just do everything in black. So I'm going to take my VersaFine Clear and ink everything up. The great thing about the MISTI is when you're stamping on watercolor paper, because there's that texture, it doesn't stamp perfectly with just one go. You have to do multiple passes. So, second pass. And the sentiment looks okay to me. It's just these silhouette, the larger silhouette stamps, like the letters are always easier. So I'm not going to ink up the sentiment again. I'm just going to ink up the images. Okay. I like how that's looking. So I'll clean off my stamps and then we'll move to the next step. Okay, so the bottom is a little bit too stark of a difference from the blue for me. And you know, there's shadows as well. So what I'm going to do is I am going to create a lighter using the same color. I'm going to dilute it with a lot of water to soften it up. And maybe bring in a little bit of the sparkly. And this is going to be my shadow color for the snow. So I'm going to come in. And I'm going to follow my hilt line. Kind of soften things up a bit. Then here, the tree, the doe, and then just kind of create a few more hills and banks. And shadows. Maybe bring in darker shadows. And some dark shadows along my lines here. Right. And I'm going to do one final layer of this white gold. So it looks like snow is falling even down here on this protected area. Then once again, let it dry. Now that it's dry, I am going to cut it out with a rounded edged squared rectangle die. And these, you can get these nested dies pretty much anywhere. Once I have it kind of lined up where I want it to be, I am going to tape it down and cut it out. And here's my cutout panel. This is a regular 4 1/4 by 5.5 size card base. So you can kind of see how big my panel ended up being. If I did the next size up for the background here, I think that that'll be good. So I'm going to cut the next size up panel out of black cardstock and then use this other side to be the base behind my embossed card layer. Okay, so I cut out all of my layers and I really like how this is looking. Right there. And look at that bloom. It looks like it's intentional, like maybe a mountain in the background. I love it. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere down all my layers onto my card base. Adhere this to my card base. And here is my finished card. I love how it looks. It is a side folding card, and all it needs now is my stamp on the background. And there we go, second Christmas card. Loving how it looks.